In the last video, we created a new circular button. In this video, I will continue and show you how to turn that button into a reusable custom component and use it independently in other parts of the code. I'll show you 4 ways to organize the code of any new custom widget, whether you prefer keeping the code in one file, multiple files across folders, or storing it in GitHub. I will show you which option to pick for which projects and give you the commands I used in option 4 to deploy the code to GitHub, so stick around. I will go through the 4 options quickly and then I will detail each one. Option 1, keep all the code in a single file. The main difference from the previous video is that we'll define a new custom widget struct and its associated methods, and then we'll use them in the same file. This approach simplifies significantly the code and also lays the ground for the other options, as you will see later. Option 2, place the custom widget code in a separate file while keeping the main application logic in main.go. Although the struct and its methods are defined in a different file, both files belong to the same package. As a result, no imports are required. Go automatically compiles all files within the same package together. Option 3, keep main.go in the root directory and move the custom widget code into a subdirectory that uses a different package name. Option 4, publish the custom widget code to GitHub and import it anywhere. I will now go through these options one by one in details. Let's start. The code of the new button will be put between these 2 lines. I will define the circus button struct. Notice here that I'm not using lowercase characters in the name. This is to export this struct so it can be used in other files. This is more important for option 3 and 4. For option 1 and 2, it doesn't matter, but I will still be using it as this is the Golang way. Same thing for the variables and the methods. We need click and hover variables, all in lowercase as this is internal variables, not used outside of the new widgets methods. We would need a label of our new button and its color. We would also need a set of colors for the button, like the background color, a color when the button is hovered, pressed, or clicked. We would also need the size of the circle or its diameter. We need the time tracker variable clicked at and the number of consecutive clicks. Then we would need some variables that cache the status of the button. Let's add some comments. Is clicked tells us if the button is clicked. Same for the rest. The first method I will implement is responsible for fetching events from the queue. This method is called whenever the button is about to be laid out, since we need the latest state information to render it with the correct color. It's also used when checking whether the button has been clicked, because both operations depend on the current event state. It makes sense to centralize the queue processing logic in a dedicated method. This method is not exported as it is intended for internal use only. So let's do it. I'll start by initializing the cached state variables clicked and cancelled to false. Next, I'll process the click events using the standard event loop by calling update with an uppercase U. For each event returned, I'll examine its kind and update the appropriate cached state variable accordingly. I will then check for press and hover. This function doesn't return anything. I should then delete the return type as its header. The second key method is the one responsible for laying out the button. As expected, this method returns the dimension of the button. It begins by draining the event queue to ensure the button's state is up to date. Next, it configures the layout constraints by setting the size based on the size value defined in the struct and assigning the value to both minimum and maximum constraints. After that, the button color is determined according to its current state. Before changing the color, however, the original background color is saved so it can be restored or used later if needed. Then we check if the button is pressed. The button changes color, same when it's hovered and when it's clicked as well. The final step in this method is drawing the circular button. I begin by using a stack layout with center alignment so that the button label is positioned on top of the button. The first child is a stack widget. Inside it, we draw the circle and make it clickable. I'm moving through this part fairly quickly, so if you'd like a more detailed explanation, you can refer back to the previous video where this process is covered step by step. Notice that we initially draw the button using the background color that we saved earlier. The second child is an expanded widget, which is responsible for laying out the button's label. Since the label function requires the theme as an argument, we also need to pass th to this method. I'd add that now before I forget and hit the compilation error later. I then continue by specifying the text size. And finally, the method returns the size of the circle. The next set of methods are used to retrieve the button's current state. I'll start with the clicked method. As explained earlier, this method first processes any pending events in the queue. The call to the update function updates the isClicked variable, and the method simply returns its value. The pressed method is even simpler. It just returns the value of the isPressed variable. Notice that isPressed is exported because its name starts with an uppercase letter. In this case, we could have kept it unexported since we already provide methods for checking the button's state. Next is the hovered method, which checks whether the button is currently being hovered over. Like the previous method, it simply returns the value of the variable isHovered. The cancelled method follows the same pattern. With that, we've completed the circle button struct and all of its associated methods. Next, I'll create an instance of the button. I'll begin by setting its label to click me, then define the colors of the text, background, hover state, pressed state, and clicked state. Finally, I'll specify the size of the circular button. After that, I'll set the default status label along with its text color. Because the button's background color changes based on its state, I'll save its default background color so it can be restored whenever the button returns to its normal state. Inside the frame event case, I'll add a switch statement to handle the different button states. When the button is clicked, the click time is recorded by setting the clicked at variable. The status label is updated to reflect the new state. Along with its color, the button's background color is also changed. And finally, invalidate is called to trigger a redraw. To implement the next case, I'll copy the clicked case, paste it below, and make the necessary adjustments. When the button is cancelled, the status label and its color are updated. Unlike the clicked state, the button's background color remains unchanged, so I remove that line. The next case is slightly different. If clicked at has been set and less than 2 seconds have elapsed since the clicked occurred, I'll call invalidate, so you continue refreshing the UI. This allows the clicked state to remain visible for a short period before returning to the default state. When the button is pressed, the status, label, and its color are updated. As with the cancelled state, the button's background color is not modified. When the button is hovered, the click time is not relevant, so the clicked at assignment is removed. The status label and its color are updated, and the button's background color is changed to indicate the hover state. In the default case, the click time is reset, the status label and its color are restored to their default values, and the button's background color is reset using the value that was saved earlier. Right after the switch statement, I lay out the label and the new button using a Flex container. The first child is a rigid widget that contains the label. I'll move through this section also fairly quickly, as the same layout pattern was explained in detail in the previous video. Next, I'll add a spacer. The second child is another rigid widget that contains the circular button. The button is laid out by calling the layout method that we defined earlier, and that's essentially the entire implementation. Let's check whether Visual Studio Code highlights any error. Everything looks good. Now let's compile and run the application. It appears to be working exactly as expected. As an enhancement, I'd like to display the number of consecutive clicks. To do that, I'll change the update method. Inside the kindClick case, I'll store the event's numClicks value in the button struct's numClicks field. Then in the clicked case of the state switch, I'll update the status label to include the click count using asprintf. Let's run it again and see how it looks. Nice, the label now displays the click count along with the status message. All the other functionalities continue to work correctly as well. I particularly like the way the button changes color when clicked. It gives the circle the same visual feedback users expect from the standard button, making it feel much more interactive and responsive. Option 1 took a little longer because we needed to reorganize the code by introducing a struct and its methods. The remaining options build on that work, so they'll be much quicker to cover. Now let's move on to option 2, where the struct and its methods are placed in separate file, while still belonging to the same package as main.go. To keep things organized, I'll create a separate folder for each option. For now, I'll create the folders option 1, option 2, and option 3. Next, I'll copy all the files into option 1 folder. Then I'll copy main.go into option 2 folder and switch to that directory. After opening the file in the editor, I'll cut the entire circle button struct along with all of its methods. Then I'll create a new file, paste the code into it, add package main at the top of it, and save it as circledbutton.go. At this point, the project consists of 2 files, one containing the circular button implementation and the other containing the application code in main.go. Once the files are saved, Visual Studio Code automatically updates and validates the imports as needed. Let's compile and run the application. The hover state works correctly. The pressed and cancelled states are functioning as expected as well. Click events and multiple click detection are also working properly. And with that, we've completed option 2. In option 3, the circled button file will be located in its own folder and it'll be used in a different package. I will copy the Go files from option 2 folder to option 3. I will change the naming a bit to make the understanding easier. I will create a folder for the widget code and name it widget folder. Then rename the circled button.go file to widgetcode.go and move it under the new created folder as shown. Let's check the content of the folders. Let's open both files in the editor. I will change the package in the widget code file from main to new widget. In the main.go file under the import section, I will add app/widget folder. The app is the application name and widget folder is the folder containing the new widget file. When referring to the circled button struct, I'll need to add new widget.circledButton, and this is all the update I need. Let's compile and run now. As I said before, app is the application name and it's used in the import as shown before. The definition of the types C and D are defined only in the widget code file. Let's duplicate that in the main file and run again. It's working now as it should be, and that's all for option 3. This is the final approach. In this option, I'll store the widget code in a GitHub repository, import it as a module, and then use it in the main.go file. I've created the folder named option 4 for this project. I'll start by creating an empty GitHub repository named circled button. Once it's created, I'll copy the repository URL so I can clone it. I'll perform all of the following steps from the command line. For this example, I'll use 2 folders. One folder will contain the widget code that will be pushed to GitHub. The other folder will contain the application with the main.go file. First, I'll make sure I'm inside the option 4 folder. I'll clone the repository. This creates a new folder named circled button. I'll go inside that folder. Since the repository is empty, there are no files in it yet. I'll create a go.mod file by running go mod init and using the full GitHub repository path as the module name. The go.mod file is now created and it contains the module path that points to the GitHub repository. Next, I'll copy the widget code we built in option 3 into this folder and save it as circledbutton.go. Then I'll generate the go.sum file and download any required dependencies by running go mod tidy. Once everything is ready, I'll push the files to GitHub by running these 3 commands. Add all the files in the current folder, commit the changes, and push them to the remote repository. After that, I create a release tag and push the tag to GitHub as well. Now I'll create another folder for the application that will use this widget. I'll go up 1 level, create the folder project/circledbutton-app and change into it. Next, I'll copy the main.go file from option 3 into the current folder. Then I'll initialize a new Go module by running go mod init circledbutton-app. Before running go mod tidy, I need to update the main.go file. First, I'll change the import from app/widget folder that I added in option 3 to github.com/GioTutorial/circledButton. Notice that I am still referring to the circledButton struct as new widget.circledButton because the package inside the module is named new widget. Back at the command line, I ran go get github.com/GioTutorial/circledButton to download the module. Then I ran go mod tidy to resolve and clean up all the dependencies. Finally, I ran the application with go run. Everything looks good. The warnings that appear are harmless. They are simply telling me that Gio attempted to use hardware graphics acceleration, but since I'm running inside a virtual machine, it automatically fell back to the software renderer. So based on the project, which option someone can pick? The rule of thumb for picking the right option is like this. If we're testing and refactoring the code, option 1 is the best and the quickest. If we're building a small application, option 2 is the fit. If we're building an application where the code needs to be reused within the same project, then option 3 is the best. And if we need a code to be reused across many projects in multiple locations, then option 4 is the right. These are the commands I ran to put the new widget code in GitHub. And these are the commands to create an application that import the new widget and use it. You can stop the video and take a screenshot.